Well, The Hills Rising yesterday released a very interesting video. They played a little clip from Secular Talk, something that he stated about whether or not he would vote for Joe Biden, that being Kyle Kalinske. And then, of course, the crew at the Hill Rising, had their take on the matter. Let's listen to their clip and hear what they had to say, and then we'll talk about it.
So, a great friend of the show, Kyle Kalinske, he's been very clear about why he is unlikely to vote for Joe Biden in spite of facing a lot of pressure to do exactly that. He's laid out what his criteria is, why Joe Biden doesn't meet it. He's been very specific about rejecting the lesser of two evils or vote blue no matter who standard. Well, he seems to be rethinking that position as frankly as I have been this week as well. He explained some of his thinking on his show yesterday. Let's take a listen.
So that's why I was 98% certain. Like, no, I'm not going to vote for Biden. He doesn't meet even my very, very lenient standards. But now I feel like the game changed, and being totally honest with you guys, walking you through my thought process, now I'm 50-50 as to whether or not I vote for him. And the reason I say that is, it actually may be the case that the stakes are, this guy is against the First Amendment of the United States Constitution and wants to effectively eliminate it by deploying the U.S. military on U.S. soil. That's Trump. And Biden, even if you grant that he's bad on this issue and he would deploy more police or he would deploy the National Guard, that is categorically different and not nearly as bad as deploying the U.S. military on U.S. soil. That is not a destruction of the First Amendment. And that, my friends, is a giant, crucial difference where there is no equivalence between the two candidates.
And, I mean, frankly, yeah, it is interesting. I'm going to bet that Kyle is not alone in that way. In fact, I know he's not alone because I feel the same way. I mean, I've been very reluctant to get behind Biden because his role in the Iraq War, his role in just the ascendant neoliberal wing in the party, his law and order, frankly, quote unquote, role in mass incarceration. I think he's been on the wrong side, the pro-free trade, the NAFTA, TPP. I mean, all of these things, in my view, he's been on the wrong side. And so even though I never thought that he and Trump were equivalent, I do feel that, he was beyond the pale, but he was outside of what I could really get behind and affirmatively vote for. Two things in my view have happened. I mean, like Kyle, I share the view that what Trump suggested with the Insurrection Act and sending the U.S. military into our streets to quash peaceful protesters, and I know you could say, oh, it's just going to be the bad ones, but we saw before our eyes as protesters that the president has now shared a letter basically, insinuating they're terrorists, were quashed with tear gas, with rubber bullets, with flashbang grenades. Church ladies, activists, journalists, whoever was in the way, quashed so that he can have this photo op. So in my view, the idea that you're going to send the military in and they're just going to be able to focus on the peaceful protests and protect everyone's First Amendment right, it's ludicrous to me looking at that. And look, he might not do it this time because now the protests have turned mostly peaceful. So he may not ultimately send the military in. But what about next time? What's the next excuse? What's the next breakdown or protest that's inconvenient that he doesn't like that would call for such authoritarian, anti-democratic, anti-constitutional approach? That to me really does shift the calculus because yes, Joe Biden, under the Obama administration, they quashed peaceful protesters at Standing Rock, and he is more conservative on these issues than I am. But he's within the bounds of sort of mainstream democratic, what I would consider appropriate or acceptable debate or thought. There's another piece for me, though, too, Sagar, which is that, obviously Joe Biden is who he is. We have a long record. We know what he stands for. He's promised us nothing's fundamentally going to change, and we should take him at his word. However, you have people in the streets in a way that I've never seen before in my lifetime. And that Trump is going to be completely unresponsive to them. He's not going to do one thing that they want. And not only that, is going to seek to crush them and try to quash their speech, because that's what we've seen him do. We know he's not going to be responsive, and he's just going to try to quash them. Biden, on the other hand, is at least trying to incorporate, he is subject to some pressure. right? He is subject to
Right, because he's
pressure,
part of the coalition
especially
at the end of the day.
he's part of the coalition, and this is 78% support, the protesters. So it's very much the mainstream of America. Since he is part of that coalition, since he depends on them for his political support, he will be somewhat responsive, at least to the demands that are coming out of this movement. So it's not just that, in my view, Trump has become worse and even more unacceptable and has committed maybe the worst act of his presidency, in my view. It's also that because of the protesters in the streets, I actually think Biden's presidency will be somewhat better than it would have been before. So for me, it's both of those pieces.
Like what I'm about to say or not, I'm going to get the blunt part out of the way and then I'm going to elaborate. The left should shut up. Seriously. I absolutely just sit down and be quiet. Now, I'm not saying that to offend any of my viewers. What I'm referring to are these voices in indie media who are supposed to be countering back to the mainstream media's narratives, opening the eyes of their viewers, informing people. They need to just go take a fucking seat or fill out an application for CNN or MSNBC. That really is more directed, especially toward Crystal. But I'm going to be completely honest, even though I've enjoyed Kyle Kulinski's content, if this is where he's at, he needs to do the same thing. They all need to. Here's why. If you want to report on something, you should be able to keep your mind open enough to look at the full picture. The left has sat around and griped and groaned and bitched and moaned about all these problems that Joe Biden was the face of. He is the epitome of the corruption that has torn our political system apart for decades. He's the embodiment of it. And the only thing that could have possibly embodied it any better was Hillary Rodham Clinton. And they've been saying this sort of thing. This is why they fled behind their Bernie Sanders. They fled behind the Tulsi Gabbards. They fled behind Andrew Yangs in certain columns. Marianne Williamson, even some went to Elizabeth Warren. They never liked Trump. But they said that as bad as Trump is, you're not getting any progress out of Joe Biden. So they have whined and whined and whined for change. And it's obvious you weren't going to get it in this election cycle unless by an absolute miracle the third party candidate got elected. And I mean, that would be nothing short of a miracle. Okay? So you knew you were getting Biden or Trump. Nothing's really going to change. You're either going to get 4 years of Obama-style policy or 4 more years of Trump-style policy. Now, while some people think that the Obama-style policy is better, once again, there was nothing of real importance that meant a lot for middle-class America done. And I don't want to hear about Obamacare because that was progress in the healthcare industry. But as I gave the analogy to Israel on Friday night on Big Talk, Little Talk, you've got 4 flat tires and someone comes along and gives you 3 pounds of air in one of them. Guess what? You still can't move the car anywhere. That's this little incremental change thing that people say we should just be happy with it. Bet you if all you got was 3 pounds of air in one tire and you still had 3 other that were completely flat and that one with only 3 pounds of air still flat enough it can't even move, meaning your car is still going nowhere, I don't think you'd be satisfied with that incremental progress. And then, of course, his response to that was, well, you push for more air. You try to get that guy to give you more air. Well, in this system, you better have a lot of money to buy more air, because that's the only thing that gets through to these politicians. And that anyone who wants to argue that point, anyone who does not just want to face facts that this is a money-bought driven system, that unless you've got the money to buy Joe Biden off to go to your positions, he's going to do what the donors want, if you're still having trouble comprehending that at this point, and you are a political commentator trying to inform people, and you can't get that through your head, you don't have any business trying to be indie media, because what you're pushing out to the masses now could almost be parroted by one of those mainstream media outlets. So you're doing nothing but really taking up space and viewers. And you're really not waking anyone up. That's first and foremost. Here's the other thing. Back to what I was saying. They've whined and griped and grumbled for change, that they're not just going to make do and accept a Joe Biden. They're better than that. That's the kind of way they kind of push it. Like they don't really want to offend the Joe Biden voter, but they say, look, we're tired of not having a candidate who stands for what we want to see done to our healthcare system, done with our political system, all these different things, right? So we're not going to just roll over to give you our vote anymore. That's their point they've been giving to why they're not going to vote Joe Biden this entire time, right? And then something happens in the streets, and all of a sudden, their game plan has done a complete 180. And they're saying, oh, we can't, this is too dangerous. Maybe Trump is too bad. Am I the only one that finds it ironic that when a candidate who sucks is going into a November election, that something like this, protest-wise, and the violence that's come along with it, just so happens to rear its head? Now, am I saying that the Democratic Party was responsible for George Floyd? Absolutely not. However, let's look at a lot of the protests we've seen involving George Floyd. Not all of them have been that violent. Not all. Matter of fact, most of them that I've been seeing recently haven't been that violent. So why did the violence break out? Well, first of all, that's the first thing I said. To me, if you wanted to do this the violent way, you seem to be going after the wrong group of folks. O'Reilly's wasn't involved. Target wasn't involved. Why'd you burn those stores down? And of course, I elaborated on, for those who say, well, there's no damage done to those communities, horse shit. If you want to know how, go back and watch my previous video where I covered that. Insurance pays for it, and then insurance premiums go up. Also, if insurance wasn't going to cover it and they try to go out for something like a loan to rebuild those stores, that gives banks ample opportunity to deny those loans, so they can then call in the big investors, big investors who buy off politicians that keep the poor and downtrodden and the inner cities from ever really bursting out that glass ceiling. Those investors then come in and they can buy up all that burned down property, rebuild it. Now they own it instead of small business owners who may have had something within that community. Big business has it. Boom. So yeah, people get screwed. So that's one thing to remember there. And I elaborate on that a little bit more. So if you have any more questions, you can go check out that video. However, what have been some reports coming out on these violent protesters? Money. Do I think every one of them were paid? No. Do I think that there would be some who were involved in these riots who genuinely had anger? They may have just taken it out on the wrong targets? Sure. However, there have been reports of instigators going around and paying people to start these riots. Now, I wonder who would profiteer the most from trying to pay folks to cause civil unrest right now. This is what you call being the ultimate opportunist. You see a situation, you know that Donald Trump is not polled well by the people of color, okay? And so now there's been a tragedy. Let's all go play political theater. Let's go stand by graves. And now let's all act like we care. And probably, and this is my guess, have some operatives going out into the streets paying people to go start riots. Again, there's people that have plenty of reason to be pissed off of what's going on without being paid off. Don't get me wrong. But I, by no means, think that the people who are just handing out money to get this stuff started are just doing it simply because they have no real reason and nothing better to do with their time. No, there's a reason there. You best believe there's a damn reason there. Absolutely. Now, the fact that that has been reported to all of you leftists, putting your voice out there to educate folks that are now saying maybe I should go vote Joe Biden anyway after I've spent all this time telling you how bad he is, how after all this time he's a horrible and he's a flawed candidate. But maybe now all the folks who told me any blue will do were right because orange won't do. So maybe I should just hold my nose and jump in the swamp and vote for Joe Biden. This is why you need to shut up. Donald Trump's base, his hardcore base, is not going to turn on Donald Trump because of these protests and these riots. So you go vote for this flawed candidate because he's coming out here with that warm tone and that cool hand Luke style approach. I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna lead like a real leader. And you just heard Crystal admit, right? Joe Biden is horrible on trade. He's horrible on foreign policy. He's horrible on all these things but Trump. So maybe I'll vote for him. Trump's base is going to be absolutely furious when that man loses the election. If Joe Biden wins, the people who have been so pro-Trump because they could not stand what they'd been seeing out of the George Bushes, the Bill Clintons, the Barack Obamas, the H.W. Bushes, the people who were sick and tired of what they'd been seeing through all those years, they have that faith in Donald Trump. You don't have to agree with it, but they have it. They also are very bought and sold on the idea that that man has been attacked 6 ways from Sunday by the Democrats because they're that jealous Hillary didn't win and they want him out of office. These are a lot of blue-collar people here, right here in America. You know, another class of people, some are white, but and the ones that I'm describing are mostly white, by the way, okay? Here's what you've got to understand. People of color have their own problem in this country, and it needs to be addressed. And I'm not going to say that the problems that white people face are anywhere near the police brutality, the racial profiling. They're not on the same level. But understand this, just because they're not on the same level, that's not going to change how that blue-collar guy feels when he sees a government that shits all over him. Here's what people are more concerned with, and anyone that wants to deny this is just denying a fact. People are utmost and foremost, 90% of the times, more concerned with what affects them in particular. This is why, yes, you've got a lot of white people who now want to help the Black Lives Matter community out and help spread this message out there to stop all this racial profiling, sure. But at the end of the day, there's plenty of other white people in this country, when it comes to the job aspect, if they had to be fired from a job, or the black person or the Hispanic person had to be fired from the job, now you tell me where they're going to sit back and say, well, I'm white, maybe I should be fired. Be honest with yourself. Do you really expect that to happen? And likewise, the people of color would certainly not say, well, let's give some more white privilege out and fire me. No. When it comes to a situation like jobs and the economy and things like that, people are more concerned with what affects me. Okay? So these people feel forgotten. And Donald Trump isn't helping them, but they think he is. because of the way he acts, the way he talks, the way he speaks to those people and tries to get to their level. Not necessarily with the racial stuff. Don't conflate the two. When he talks about bringing the jobs back and he talks about how bad they've sold us out, you didn't hear that sort of thing really from Barack Obama or George Bush. Period. So there's a difference there. When you go and do not make a statement in November, and you just hold your nose and vote for Joe Biden again, you will be voting for the very problem that got you Donald Trump. Now, you see what's happening, and you think that this is, in a way, at least being agitated by Donald Trump, right? So your goal is to stop the Donald Trump. We've got to stop this. Here's what happens when you vote for the problem that makes Donald Trump. Sometime down the line, you'll get another one. And they could be worse. Here's what you get when you get Joe Biden. You get that calm voice who's going to come in and try to calm the protests down. And nothing's going to happen other than that. Now, Crystal said, oh, he's more responsive to the protesters. He might listen to what they have to say, and he might make his policies based off of that. Unless those protesters get a few $1 million to $1 billion. No. He don't give a damn what they do. He don't. As long as they're not showing their ass like that on his watch, he could care less. Matter of fact, he's sitting back saying, yeah, this is good stuff. This is good stuff. Keep it up. I can beat Orange Man now. This is what he wants. Because he knows it's what he can use to finally have something with his feeble ass mind to go after Donald Trump with and win the election. As far as any kind of policy he's going to put in place, should he be elected, you can bet your ass it's going to be so superficial that it'll be a complete waste of time. Guarantee you. Complete waste of time. He's going to get out there and talk the talk all day long, but that motherfucker won't take the first step to walk the walk. Mark my words. He won't do it. I'm not saying Donald Trump would either. So rather than backpedal on this message you've been preaching this entire time about stop accepting these corrupt corporate candidates and stop saying I'm going to make do with the lesser of two evils, make your fucking statement, because you're screwed either way. Yeah, one's taking an approach that you don't like. If Trump did call the military in for this, I would not agree with that. However, let's be perfectly honest. Military has been called in to kind of quash down protests in the past. You need to go back and study some history. There was an uprising during George Washington's presidency, and not only did the military go in there to quash it down, George Washington saddled up and rode into it himself. And that alone, when the protesters heard that he was coming, scattered the whole thing. Because they did not want to go up against the infamous legendary General George Washington, who is now president. Okay? So, understand that. It's happened before. I don't agree with it, but don't act like this is something absolutely unprecedented. Oh my God, he's going to eliminate the First Amendment. First of all, understand this, no matter which way you go, your Bill of Rights are already being torn apart. Joe Biden would take out a lot of the Second Amendment. So Trump takes out a lot of the First Amendment. Oh my Lord. They both are going to take out your Fourth Amendment by continuing the Patriot Act. Your Bill of Rights are just as screwed as you are with either candidate. So stop acting like only one of them is really going to come after your Bill of Rights. They both are. They both are. And now after all this whining and crying, you're going to hold your nose and go vote for Joe Biden. Again, here's what happens. You'll get maybe a George Floyd bridge in Minneapolis. It'll probably be put in the side of town where the inner city's at. It won't be well maintained. It won't be well kept. When there is an infrastructure project that comes along that needs to fix these bridges, it'll be probably one of the last ones to get touched, just like all the other Martin Luther King named things out there, whether that be roads, boulevards, avenues, bridges. They're not well kept. They're not kept like little beautiful things. Probably the only one that is the Martin Luther King Memorial. You'll get something like that out of it. And the people of color in the black community will still be shit all over by the politicians for 4 to 8 years. Wow. Congratulations. You made a difference. You made a real fucking difference, didn't you? No, you didn't. Not a single bit of difference did you make holding your nose and voting for Joe Biden. You just quelled some protests down. You quieted everything down. And again, when you look into some of these more violent ones, you've got the reports of people paying people to go out and start this kind of stuff. So for all the leftists who think you're just going to get this change, understand politicians will play dirty. They'll instigate something like this to happen again, number one, and then when it happens again, you'll do the same thing what you're doing right now, right? Oh, man, oh, no, we can't have this. No, God, no. I didn't see this coming. I just wanted to sit around and gripe and grumble and thought they would go peacefully. That ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen today. It ain't going to happen tomorrow. And it's never going to happen. Period. So wake up and realize that fact. Okay? Also realize, while nothing's going to happen when you vote for Joe Biden, the left won't be up and ready to go vote for the next Democratic candidate, because 4 to 8 years of Joe Biden's going to just crush everyone. Guarantee you. Unless you get some charismatic person to follow Joe Biden that is more like a Bernie or a Tulsi, maybe. But clearly, a lot of these folks who are considering third party are backing off and wanting to go back down Democrat Avenue. So when you kill the motivation to get the third party candidate possibly really in play by 2024, because you're going to go vote Democrat again, you're not going to keep the message up, you're going to sheep herd folks to fucking Joe Biden. Okay. 4 to 8 years, you won't get shit, and there won't be a grassroots movement to go really after his successor, because his policy is going to be just like what we've been getting, and it's going to absolutely suck. The Republicans are going to know where their bread's buttered, and that is with another Donald Trump. Because there is going to be a lot of those Donald Trump supporters, as I mentioned, who are going to be absolutely furious at what happened in 2020. And they will find a candidate who will take up that mantle. Donald Trump will pass that torch. He'll probably go right through the primaries and win the nomination, and you will have Donald Trump 2.0. Now, here was the prediction that I made to David Spurrier, the Radical Independent, yesterday. It would not surprise me one bit if Donald Trump 2.0 doesn't come from the South. Donald Trump's very popular in the South. And you know, they're already calling Donald Trump the racist president, right? Well, where is the area of the country where racism is so supposedly infamous, right? The old rotten South. You know, those people that live below the Mason-Dixon line that wear bed sheets with holes cut in the top of them, right? That's the kind of stigmas that the South already gets labeled as. Now, is that true? No. Do we have racist bastards down here? Yes. Is every one of us one of them? No. Period. But that's a stigma. So imagine you got already a guy from New York being treated like a Klansman. What do you think's going to happen if you get someone out of the middle of Mississippi or Alabama, Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Arkansas, Louisiana? What happens when you get someone, even Texas? What happens when you get someone from the old South? But I would say especially if you're picking someone out of Appalachia or, again, Alabama, Mississippi, somewhere within this region around here. What happens when you get someone from that neck of the woods who has this twang to his voice, like you hear in mine, and they get out there and start saying the stuff that Donald Trump says? All these people calling Donald Trump racist are going to take it to a whole nother level. Now, he'll probably get elected because, again, all those people who feel that their candidate was crushed by the witch hunt are going to have a vendetta. And what happens if they win that election? You think you won't see this sort of thing happen again because now you've potentially got Donald Trump 2.0, who's from the South, sounds like that old proverbial racist redneck, and that they're not going to rile up trouble like you're seeing right now? You think that won't be the perfect opportunity for people to say, see how bad America is, we're still ruled by racism? It's going to be every damn thing that anyone who has a chip on their shoulder with this sort of thing is going to have. It's going to be everything they need to start another one of these. And if anything, it could be very well worse because now you've literally got the embodiment of everything they're saying Donald Trump is. Just pretty much an old racist Klansman, and maybe his predator or his successor won't actually be a Klansman, but people are going to label him as one, and the only way they won't be able to do that is if by some chance the people, or the guy who succeeds Trump, okay, that the guy that comes after Trump is by some chance a guy of color. But if he's a white guy, you better bet your ass that's going to be the talking point. What you're heading this country towards, holding your nose and voting Joe Biden, people can come back and watch this video years down the road, and they're probably going to realize I was a prophet on this one. What you're heading us towards, continuing to vote for this lesser of two evils crap, is another civil war. Right versus left. That's what you're heading this country towards. You won't get change out of Joe Biden, and you'll get another Donald Trump that's probably going to be worse by holding your nose and getting Joe Biden elected. Now, again, re-electing Donald Trump won't be great either. But at least if the Democratic Party fails again and we have to go through 4 more years of a Donald Trump, the only good thing out of that is going to be, after 4 more years of Donald Trump, the likelihood that people are not going to want another Donald Trump is going to be far, far more likely than it is right now, because they're going to get 4 more years of it. Then, because people realize the Democrat Party couldn't beat Donald Trump, you've actually really got the opportunity for a third-party candidate to actually be truly considered. And if third-party candidates and the people who want third-party candidates do their work, you could really see a serious threat of a third-party candidate getting elected. That's the outcome should Trump be reelected. The outcome of Joe Biden getting elected, people that were for Trump this time around are going to have a vendetta. Then they will probably succeed in their vendetta because Joe Biden will be a failure. When they succeed in the vendetta, we're right back to where we're at now in a matter of no time, and my prediction is things will be worse. So I will say this again. For all the people who've griped and grumbled for all this change, for all the folks who wanted it, for all the people that complained about Joe Biden who are now telling you to hold your nose and jump into the swamp and vote for Joe Biden, and they're at least considering doing it now, be quiet. Be quiet. Because let me tell you what you're doing. You're taking oxygen out of the air and wasting it to speak. And that's all you're doing. You're sheep herding people to the problem. The problem, not a solution, a problem. And this is without a doubt why the left hasn't been successful in these elections and hasn't won. And with this attitude, with this sort of a defeatist attitude, they never will.